Hello and welcome to the 4th edition of the Top 100 countdown of my games of the decade. So we've gone all the way to 71 now, and so today we're going to be going to 70 to 61. As always, these games are my personal choices. There's plenty of games that I have not got around to playing. There's some games that I maybe didn't get into as much as everyone else. So there's going to probably be some surprises, there's going to be some controversial choices maybe, and there's plenty of choices that if you know me, you know probably what's coming. So yeah, we might as well get on with this and start right now on 70. Puppeteer is a really underappreciated game that not a lot of people really talk about much. I mean, it's understandable, it was a PS3 game released pretty much alongside the PS4, so no one was paying attention to it at that point. Which is a shame, because this game has a lot of really good stuff in it. Basically, you are this little puppet boy called Kutaro, and you've been kidnapped by the Moon Bear King, and he's taken your head, and you have to go off and fight him with these magical scissors, and it's a weird, quirky adventure that sort of uses the conceit of it's all a puppet show, yeah, and it's really interesting how it's all come together. Like, visually, this game is stunning. It really leans into its handmade aesthetic that it's going for. Again, it's a puppet show, so you've got characters that are made of wood and, plush things, and it really commits to it throughout. It's got this really good, consistent art style that I really, really like. And just the storyline it's bonkers. It's basically just like a hyperactive fairy tale sort of thing, but it really works really well, and there's a lot of imagination going on in it, and you have all these really interesting encounters with the different generals who are all based on the Chinese zodiac. So you've got like a tiger boss, and you've got a horse boss, and you've got a rat boss, and that sort of thing. And yeah, it does a lot of really cool, interesting things. There's some really, really amazing voice performances as well. It's just a really, really good, underappreciated game. It's a little bit linear, but on the whole is just a really fun experience that I would recommend people check out if they can. It's not very often that a game hits me emotionally. That's not to say that I don't get emotional reactions to games, of course I do. But I mean really soul level emotional reactions. Unravel is one of those games. It is a game that just cut deep into my soul and just made me cry. Part of that is kind of when I played it, but also just the effectiveness of what it was doing at the time. The whole purpose of it is that you're kind of going through someone's life, essentially through photos and memories and all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of sort of reflection and memories is a big part of the theme of this game. And there's one particular level where it's kind of about relationships, and there's just one bit where the music kind of swells in a certain way, and you get certain words on screen and things, and it broke me, and I had to stop and compose myself for a bit. And it's very rare that games do that, and so I have to commend Unravel for that. Outside of that, it's also just a really good platformer. It's got some really interesting puzzles. It's a very simplistic game. It doesn't really do a lot that's too imaginative, but it's just one of those really nice, sweet little games that really just tells a nice little story, and that's why it's here. It's just a really sweet little game that made me cry. So, I am not a fan of Kratos as a character. I've always felt that the narrative of the original God of War trilogy was angry man has tantrum, destroys Greece. That's kind of what it feels like to me. I mean, there's kind of an element of like traditional Greek myth in the first one, but then 2 and 3 just it all kind of falls apart when Kratos is just like, I've got all this power, I'm going to abuse that power, and then the gods are like, no, stop abusing that power, and he's like, well, you can't tell me what to do, and then kills everyone. Yeah, which is kind of my main problem with God of War. But that said, one thing that I've always liked about God of War is its core gameplay, which is actually really, really fun. It's a really good fluid battle system, lots of variety to it, a lot of the stuff that they bring in kind of playing on a lot of the Greek myths and things I really liked. There's just a lot of stuff that really works in God of War from a gameplay perspective, and it looks great. God of War 3 is just such a really good looking game that I'm just amazed they pulled this off on a PS3, because it does not look PS3 level. It's also got a lot of really memorable, exciting encounters. Like, okay, the narrative is a bit nonsense, and I kind of find it a bit laughable, but the actual encounters, even if they don't make a lot of sense, just from a pure like, yeah, let's go beat up the gods, they're really fun, and they've done some really imaginative stuff with that. So yeah, God of War 3 is here because it's a really fun game with a lot of imagination and style, slightly let down by just this angry man. I mean, it's pretty much inevitable that I was going to start bringing up Smash Brothers, because I really like Smash Brothers. It's a great series. Smash 4 is the follow-up to Brawl, which improves on a lot of stuff that Brawl did. I really liked Brawl. I'm one of those people who did like Brawl. I don't care. But Smash 4 improved on a lot of that. It removed tripping, which was good, and it's just sort of refined a lot of the fighting and made it a little bit more balanced in places, I feel. And just it tweaked the presentation, made it look a lot more interesting, and just general like improvements. I think where it falls short, however, is like some of the character choices were a little bit odd. You know, I'm not too excited about Rosalina. I mean, you know, they started strong with like, here's Mega Man and here's Wii Fit Trainer. I genuinely was up for the Wii Fit Trainer as an inclusion. People were angry about that, but I was like totally on board. I'm still totally on board with the Wii Fit Trainer. But the other problem with Smash 4 is it's slightly devoid on content. I feel it's really just like the fighting mode, and they don't really do much else besides like, here's a mode where you can smash some boxes, and then here's a mode that's basically Mario Party but significantly worse. But ultimately Smash 4 is still a really fun game that does a lot of really interesting stuff, and it just refined the formula. It could have been improved a little bit, and was. Maybe I'll tell you more about that later. So the controversial Infamous opinions continue, because this, of course, is my favourite Infamous game. That's right, I've seen a lot of people not really like this one as much as 2, and I'm baffled by this because I feel completely the opposite. And not even close, like I drastically prefer Second Son to Infamous 2. Just there's a lot of reasons for it. Infamous 2 has always felt very dour, it's always felt very serious, it's too dark for my liking. And Second Son is a lot more interesting story-wise, character-wise, and it looks better as well. And that's not just from the fact that it's a PS4 game rather than the previous titles being on the PS3, this is an aesthetic thing as well. The first 2 games were actually kind of bland, they were kind of saturated, very muted colours. Seattle in Infamous Second Son looks absolutely amazing, it's very colourful, it's very vibrant, and it just looks great. I really liked Delsin as a character as well. I thought he was much more fleshed out than Cole. Yeah, he was a little bit of a brat sometimes, but I kind of felt that worked with the story. The story in general was really good, and I felt that it kind of was a lot more varied, a lot more interesting than the first 2 games in the series. And the powers as well, I just really liked them, particularly when it came to things like traversal, which was really, really fun. And I just feel like everything about Second Son was just so much better than the first two Infamous games, and I just really, really enjoyed Second Son, and I'd love to see more like this going forward, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, Infamous Second Son is my favourite Infamous game, despite the fact that everyone seems to think otherwise. So I'm not much of a racing game player. I occasionally play racing games here and there, and just not massively into them as a whole, but I kind of am always fascinated by the Gran Turismo series because it takes on a RPG kind of aesthetic. So you're essentially a racing driver moving through a career, getting more cars, and the more cars you get, the more races you can enter, and the tougher opponents you can take on, and you kind of level up a lot. It's just a really interesting concept for a game for me. Like, it's a much more interesting thing than just travelling through a career like a lot of racing games do. And yeah, Gran Turismo 5 is just a really good interpretation of all of that. It's just they've taken that formula and they've kind of refined it quite heavily in this one. Admittedly, I've only played 2 Gran Turismo games, that includes this one, but I just really like this one. It's just a really fun racing game that you can just jump in and play around with, even if you don't necessarily understand all the stats and all the rest of it, which is certainly the case for me. But I just really enjoy the experience of playing Gran Turismo 5 and collecting this ludicrous amount of cars. Yeah, just doing all these different races and seeing where that takes you. It's just a lot of fun to just blast around the racetrack every now and then. So that's really why it's here. And if that appeals to someone like me who isn't super into racing games, then it's clearly doing something right. I much preferred DJ Hero to any of the guitar-based rhythm games. That's right. I mean, it's partly down to music taste. I'm much more into a lot of electronic music, a lot of hip-hop, a lot more than I am into like heavy guitar stuff. And so DJ Hero, I feel, was made specifically to appeal to me because it's got this ridiculously good selection of songs that aren't just you playing the songs, but they're you playing 2 songs at once that have been specially mixed for the game. And the idea is that you're a DJ blending all this stuff together, and obviously you're not, this stuff's been made before, but it really does feel good to kind of hear those sorts of things blending together. And DJ Hero 1 was already really good. DJ Hero 2 refined the mechanics a lot, I felt. The soundtrack wasn't quite as good. I felt that the second game relied a little bit too heavily on top 40 songs rather than just classic hip-hop, classic dance, and that sort of thing. Although there's plenty of that still in DJ Hero 2. There's like a really good mix of Busta Rhymes and House of Pain's Jump Around. That's a really good one. And there's also a really, really good mix of Calvin Harris's I'm Not Alone with Show Me Love, which is the 90s house classic by Robin S. I really liked that mix as well, and just such a good soundtrack that I wish had been released as a soundtrack outside of the game, because it's just superb. A really, really fun rhythm game that I prefer to the Guitar Heroes and Rock Bands of the world, and I feel that it deserved better, but sadly the oversaturation of the guitar ones, which led to the downfall of the genre, dragged this down with it, and it's very unfortunate because I would love more of this. And so we come to the third of the Tomb Raider trilogies, which have kind of gone backwards, as you might have noticed. That's because I do still feel that this is the best one. The reason I feel it's the best one is because it's got the clearest vision for what it was trying to do. It didn't really feel like a Tomb Raider game, but it did a really good job of establishing its identity and working around it. And sadly, I feel that is kind of the problem with the whole trilogy, because it took a lot of the elements that this made for its setting and what it was trying to achieve with Lara's origin story, and it kind of dragged a lot of that along with it into places it didn't need to be, like the survival mechanics and that sort of thing. But I feel that on the whole it's a really well made game that does a lot of things right. Lara's characterization is a little bit wonky, but they did a good job of kind of making her very inexperienced, and it works as an origin story for that reason. She's not quite the character we know, but that's kind of the point. She's supposed to be this younger, more naive version, and they've nailed that quite well. It's just a shame that they never really pulled her out of that too much going forward, which is a shame. And there's a lot of really eerie stuff in the game that I felt worked really well. Like, there was a lot of mystery with the island, there was a lot of really interesting locations, even if they didn't go to enough tombs for a Tomb Raider game. But apart from that, I thought that Tomb Raider did a lot of stuff right, but also was kind of the beginning of them not quite getting things right in future. But hopefully, again, we'll see more improved Tomb Raider games going forward that kind of have a clearer vision. Hopefully in the next decade's best games, I will be ranking Tomb Raider a lot higher. Hopefully. Yeah? Yeah? Let's hope so. Oh no, it's the scary SJW game. Oh no, it's the walking simulator. Oh no, oh no. Yes, the internet hates this game for some irrational reason, despite the fact that it's a really good game. Yes. No, you're not running around doing a lot of stuff. You are just rummaging around a house. Ultimately, that's all you're doing. But it does that really well, and it tells a really good story within that. I think maybe some people felt disappointed that this wasn't a horror game, because it kind of is set up like one. The atmosphere is very horror-esque, which it does really well, and I do have to commend them for that, but it's creepy in a way of, like, imagine you'd been away for a while and you come home and no one's in and you don't know why, and you're just wandering around in the dark like, what the hell's happening? But it's not overtly a horror game. There's some really good environmental storytelling. You've got all the gradually piecing together what's going on, what's happening with the family, I want to know what's happening, and finding all these secret passageways in the house. It's really fascinating to kind of go around and do all that. And yeah, I just really liked how it told its story, and I don't know what the problem is. Honestly, you can just get out if you have a problem with Gone Home. Because, yeah, it's a really good experience, and it's a lot better than some walking simulators that exist out there. And I'd honestly equate it more as like a very simple point-and-click adventure, honestly. And that's praise from me. But yeah, I really liked Gone Home. Good story, good atmosphere, and just a good little experience, really. I've never played the Shadowrun tabletop RPG, so admittedly my opinion of Shadowrun Returns is coming from having just played the game. I've never actually used the Shadowrun system. I've only ever really played D&D, to be perfectly honest with you. But what I have played, what I did experience with Shadowrun Returns, was a really cool RPG with some interesting mechanics and a really interesting setting, and let's be honest, sometimes that's really all you need. It's a little bit limited in its scope, I feel, particularly where powers are concerned. I don't know if it was the build I chose, because I went with like a hacker, but then I felt like I wasn't really using the hacking powers as much as I wanted. And when I did get to use them, I felt like I was missing a whole bunch of stuff. And I feel like maybe the scope of the powers were a bit too limited considering the length of the campaign. I don't know. Yeah, but other than that, I felt like a lot of stuff went into this game. There's a lot of really complex stuff with your skills and, you know, being able to like customize things to a really extensive degree, and I really liked that. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's got a really interesting story built into it. I know there's like, you can make your own campaigns and share them around, I think was an aspect of this, but I never really played around with that. I just played the story that was built in, but I really liked it. I thought that was really good. Yeah, just interesting setting, interesting mechanics, interesting storytelling. Went to some places I didn't expect it to go as well, which was cool. I liked that. So yeah, I had a good time with Shadowrun, but I felt that sort of limited scope with its powers kind of held it back a bit. But apart from that, really good. And that's it for another part of my top 100 games. So that is, where are we now? I'm losing track. We are, yes, we're 70 to 61 done. Yes. So join me again tomorrow for yet another part of this top 100 as we explore 60 to 51. We'll be almost halfway once tomorrow's over. Ooh, what will I be talking about? What will I be singing the praises of tomorrow? I guess you just got to come back tomorrow and find out, haven't you?